you. Thank you, Amy. So a little bit about myself. I work at Montana State University. I'm the social media strategist for MSU. I am the first and only MUS employee to be hired in this role. So I will admit it's a little lonely out here, which is what kind of made me go out there and find friends. I mean, that's basically what it is, right? You have a community, friends that turn into family, et cetera. Can I ask, and are any of you transplants to Bozeman? Okay, a lot of you. That makes me feel way better because I moved here March 2014. So when I found this job, I'm gonna talk about weak ties in my presentation, but I used to write for my high school, for the newspaper when I was in high school, my local newspaper, on their like teen page, which made me think I was super cool, you know, like, oh, okay, I get to write for the Roanoke Times. But they always assign the youngest reporter to manage like the teenagers in the group, right? So she became a mentor of mine, and then I kind of lost touch because I went out of state for school. I actually went to Winston-Salem, to Wake Forest, where Beth is from, and right? Yeah. And I lost contact. I wasn't really interested in keeping up with, my high school life because I was too cool to be in college now, right? And the year after I graduated college, I ran into her in a coffee shop, and we kind of did the whole, oh, you look familiar thing, where do we know each other from? And we were like, oh yeah, the Roanoke Times, and I started following her and her husband on social media because I was working at Wake Forest at the time, and so was he. And I did a one-year fellowship after college at Wake, and I was kind of like, do I want to go to law school? It would make my parents really happy, like, since I didn't major in biology, so I wasn't going to do medical school. So I, chose not to go to law school. It was kind of a hard decision. So I was at home taking care of my grandmother for 6 months. She's on dialysis, and I'm very grateful that I had that time with her, but it really made me want to find others who I, could hang out with that we didn't watch like the Game Show Network all day, right? It was just like, I'm grateful for that time. So I actually found my current job on Twitter through a weak tie. So it was great. I literally had never heard of Bozeman. Be honest, like I didn't know where Montana was. I had no desire ever to live in the North. I was like, you know what? Whatever, I'll just apply, see how it goes. Yeah, so first job I applied to, I got it, and I moved out here in March 2014. I just thought like, okay, why not? New adventure. I've, only known Virginia and North Carolina. I feel like it's time for me to broaden my perspective on the world. So I moved here literally with no friends. I didn't know anybody in town. I only knew the like 4 people who interviewed me for my job, which is probably not the best way to like start out friendships. Like, hey, do you guys want to go to happy hour? And then watch me cry as I like miss my family and all of my friends. So I started reading this book, and oh gosh, and it made me realize that I needed to have themes for every single year that I was here. So my first year I was here, I said yes to everything because while I am extroverted, I do like time to myself, and it's hard, whether you're extroverted or not, it's really hard to put yourself out there, especially when you don't know anybody, and it's like, granted, I should have been on Lexapro when I first moved out here, but it's fine. So if drugs help, take it. But it allowed me to, if my coworker texted me, I remember this exactly, it was like 8 p.m. on a Friday, and she was at her like friend's birthday party at the R Bar. I was like, well, I don't know your friend, but okay, I was in my pajamas, and I was like, no, get up, put pants on, like go there and just hang out for half an hour. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And Granted, I didn't stay for very long. I think I stayed for like 45 minutes. And I didn't make any lifelong friends out of it, but it helped strengthen that one connection I had with my coworker. And then she did keep inviting me out. So I'm not saying I'm perfect at that. I have, had my moments of weakness when the weather's like this and I haven't gone, to, I think it was like Bobcat Fest or something. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to go. I was too nervous about meeting their friends. I didn't feel like I would fit in, so I stayed at home. And then she never invited me out again. It's one of those things that if you accept an invitation, you are strengthening a tie, even if it's a small one, right? And it goes both ways. So I try very hard to connect people that I know, even if I don't know them very well, just because I know how hard it is to move to a place and literally know nobody. So that was my year one motto for myself. My year two was only to say yes to things that made me happy. So I had a group of friends, is the good word, because they weren't, good influences in my life. Like they always stressed me out. I realized like, are they good for my mental state, et cetera? And I had never been hiking before. So like, well, let's go to Fairy Lake. And I was like, okay, that's pretty. I looked it up online. I was like, oh, that's not bad. It's so nice and pleasant around a lake. But I guess the gates hadn't been opened yet. And they're like, okay, well, it's only like half a mile uphill to the lake. It's fine. But they parked all the way at the bottom. And I had never hiked before. And I was like, oh my God, why am I here? Like, I literally said, like, go without me. Like, I have my bear spray. Like, I'll wait at the car. So I like pushed through it. It took like 3 hours because it was so slow. I wasn't conditioned to do it. And then we got to the lake and we didn't even hike around the lake. We just like saw it and came back, right? It was like so dark that we were like, yeah, we should probably leave. But I realized I was like, that did not make me happy. Yeah, I said yes to going, but I was miserable the entire time. I kind of wish that I was like, God, these people aren't my friends. Why would they make me do this? And it's one thing to, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, but if it's making you so miserable, don't do it. Like, no isn't a bad word. It took me a really long time to understand that and just say, oh, hey, I'm busy or I can't go with you. And I used to make up excuses like, oh, I have to stay at work late. But now I'm just like, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound fun to me. And like, maybe we can do something else in town if you want, or I'll go kayaking with you or something else. And then my third one was to focus on the relationships I had created. So I have been here for 3 years. And that's why there's 3. But, it's fun to make new friends, but you also can't ignore the relationships that you did make. So the friends that I made and the connections I made when I first moved here, I try really hard to keep in contact with them, whether it's just like coffee once every 2 months, or I send them an email. I'm a big fan of handwritten notes. Maybe that's because I'm from the South and everybody likes getting mail, even if it's just like, hey, I'm thinking of you, or I saw this, XYZ, like, my friend really likes sharks, and she has like a shark hoodie, and I found these cute like shark socks where the mouth kind of engulfs your leg. They were like $12, whatever. So I mailed them to my friend, and she was like, oh, it just made my day. And things like that, I think, even though I haven't seen her in a long time, it really nurtures that relationship that you once had and can help you in the future. So is that helpful? Does that make sense? I don't know. So also, weak ties. So I'd mentioned that, Defining Decade by Meg Jay. Has anyone read it? Has anyone heard of it? I should have brought my copy. I literally give it to every single intern or student that I've had contact with at MSU or in my life, because it was given to me when I graduated. Honestly changed my life. So it means, she has a TED Talk, she's awesome. It's like, their 30s are not the new 20s, right? So you need to like think about intentionally what you're doing in your life, whether it's, working at a coffee shop versus unpaid internship at a graphic design studio, right? Because the principal at the graphic design studio might come to the coffee shop every day and see you, but he's never gonna see you more than a barista, right? But if you're an unpaid intern that hustles and works really hard, you might get promoted or you might get connections elsewhere. So it's thinking about rationally your life choices and what you're going to do, which is not always easy. It also talks about like, oh, sweet, I should probably have kids soon because, you know, not getting any younger. So it's a good thing. It also talks about for both men and women, so I really like this. It also talks about like brain development, et cetera, but it talks a lot about urban tribes. And urban tribes, are you guys familiar with that? Sort of. So urban tribes are kind of like your family away from your blood family, right? So like right now, I hang out a lot with my MSU coworkers. They're really similar to me. We like the same things. We're, you know, so think about it, like millennials who mountain bike and like to ski, et cetera, right? Like you're just together because you like the same things. But are they really going to be there for you if something else happens to you? Like, so you have to move back, et cetera, or like you broke your leg, are they gonna come there and help you like go to the grocery store? Like, I had shingles when I was 25. Don't recommend that to anybody. It's awful. I was like, I literally was at urgent care and they're like, oh, you have shingles. I was like, isn't that what old people get? And they're like, yeah, it is. But young people can get it too. And it's one of those things that made me realize like, wow, I really am far away from my family. Like my mom, who lives in Virginia, can't, like she's a nurse. She can't just like, you know, take sick days from work and come, you know, help me like as I lay in bed because I'm so in pain from shingles. But it really helps to have your community that can help you, right? So that's something that I wouldn't ask everybody in my community. Like I probably wouldn't have asked Amy at that time in our relationship to like help me change the bandage on my back. But thank you, I appreciate that. But I wouldn't have felt comfortable asking you. But it is important to find your group of people, right? In your weak ties, like I had mentioned, Patrick, who tweeted about this job, he's a weak tie. I've literally probably spoken to Patrick 5 times in my life, have no other interactions with him, but it's one of those things like, okay, you tweeted about it, I talked to him about it, he's like, oh yeah, it looks like a great job, you should apply, whatever. He coached me through it a little bit, and it worked out. People want to help other people, and your weak ties are more likely able to get you a job or connect you to someone than your closest friends, right? So I have announcement. I am leaving MSU to work at Ohio State University in July. So a lot of people are asking me like, hey, can you recommend me for your job? And I have a harder time recommending good friends of mine who would be a good fit for it. One, because I don't think they would be a good fit for it, but yeah. But also because, you know, if it goes badly, it looks bad on me, right? Whereas if it's a weak time, like, oh, I met this girl once or twice, like she seems to really know what she's doing in the social media area, I'm gonna recommend her for my boss, like as an interview, like a process, right? Or like a casual coffee date. So that's, I'm more inclined to do that than be like, oh, my best friend here wants to take over my job, right? So weak ties can really help you get a job. And remember, people like to talk about themselves. I love to talk about myself. Like, that's why I'm doing this. Like, 45 minutes to just talk about what I like to do? Awesome. And then this is the strategy I employed when I first moved here. It's called MWF meets BFF. I really like books, if you guys haven't noticed. So a college girlfriend of mine recommended this to me, and she was like, you know, when I moved to Nashville, it was really hard for me to find friends, but if, one of her friends recommended it to her. Have any of you read this? Okay, it's kind of funny. It's a really easy read. So this girl goes on 52 friend dates because she has like best friends in New York City where she just lived, but she moved to Chicago with her husband for his job. And she was like, who am I gonna get brunch with? Like, it's one thing to have those strong relationships that you can keep up with digitally, but everyday things like tonight's the art walk, like, do I wanna miss out on something like that just because I don't have anyone to go with? Like, how do I make those in-town friends that I can spend time with and explore a new city with? So it's called MWF meets BFF, like married white female seeks best friend forever. And she's so right. Like, it's easy for me to announce, like, oh, it's so hard for me to meet a partner here. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, wow, it's really hard to meet men in Bozeman who, like, want to leave Bozeman, right? Like, who are successful and want to leave. But it's harder to meet, or it's harder to say, like, wow, I'm really lonely. Like, I don't have anyone to go to the movies with or just go eat at a restaurant with, et cetera, right? So, like, how many dating apps are there? So many, and that's probably the first thing people do instead of trying to find a friend, which I'm not saying you should do either. That's just what I did. So she literally made a call out to her friends and family saying, like, if you know nobody in the area, I really want to go on a friend date with them. And I think they would just go to like some restaurant for drinks or like dinner after, or they'd go to a yoga class. But it's like she made it a point to go to one every single week. And I did that while I was here. I didn't complete all 52. It was interesting. I met a lot of interesting people in Bozeman this way. And I met them through Meetup. Are you guys on Meetup? Sort of. So there was this group called Women of Bozeman 20s and 30s edition. Yeah, so I met a lot of people through that. And you know, you kind of meet each other at book club, or you go to happy hour or something, and then you branch off, right? But then I also met people through work. I am clearly also very outgoing. I also weasel my way into things that I probably shouldn't, but I'm just like, hey, I'm here. Like, kick me out if you want to. But I just am also just so curious. And I like the word curious more than nosy. I'm just so curious what's happening on campus that I just go everywhere. And then volunteering. So Junior League was a really big thing to me when I was in the South, and we don't have one in Bozeman. There's a Junior League chapter in Billings, but I wasn't gonna drive like 2.5 hours to volunteer, right? So you could volunteer and meet people, and that's actually how I met Beth, was through TEDx Bozeman. I had literally cold emailed them, like from their website, like, hey, do you need any social media help? I do it for the university. I feel like I can do it for you guys. And they're like, yeah, sure. So I went and became part of their committee. And I actually didn't do this past year, the year before that. And I met amazing people through it. Same with Bozeman Soup. Are y'all familiar with that event? No? Bozeman Soup is awesome. So I shouldn't say that because I'm not doing it anymore because I'm leaving. But it's like a microfunding site. So it's through the Bozeman Community Foundation. And you pay $10, you get soup, bread, and a vote, and there's 4 presenters. They're not allowed to use technology. They'll have 4 minutes to give you their idea. So it can be like, oh, we have a kids edition, which is so cute, and like this one girl wanted to build fairy gardens around town. And so you present your idea to the community. It usually has to do something with like bettering Bozeman, hopefully. And then at the end of the night, whoever gets the most votes wins that pot of money, which is interesting. So it's kind of microfunding a little bit. It isn't always like $1,000, but if it's like $500 to start something, that's pretty good, right? And it gives you a sense of ownership. So I started doing that, and it was a wonderful way to meet a sect of women in Bozeman that I had never would have had the opportunity to meet. So again, cold emailed there. That was a volunteer opportunity. And I do want to preach work-life balance. I don't have it, but I know the importance of it. Like, don't overload yourself that you're not happy and you're just like constantly working and you get shingles, because that happens. But like, weigh out your time commitments, right? Like Bozeman Soup time commitment for me was probably 10 days a year, and not even a full 10 days, like 2 hours, like, okay, 3.5 hours for the actual event. And then our planning meetings were just so fun that they didn't seem like a hassle to me, right? Because you're getting together with friends and you're having fun, you're working towards a cause you care about. Now, I will say TEDx Bozeman was a huge time commitment, right? So that's why I had to say no the 3rd year that I was here, because I was in grad school, I was writing my thesis, and I couldn't handle it. So it's okay to say no, and it's okay to back out of things that you're in. People understand, and if they don't, they're not really looking out for your best interest anyway. So I do have various pockets of communities, and then I also try to connect those communities if I can, mainly because it's fun when everybody knows each other. Bozeman's a small community. It is growing every day, but the people you meet, I think, not that I'm like trying to always think about my future, but think about it. Like, how can they help me in the future? How can I help them? Whether it is through, closer friendships or through weaker ties. And then 3 things that I learned from my friend dating escapades. Not everybody wants to be your friend. I was like, I'm amazing. Nobody wants to be my friend. But like, yeah, not everybody's interested in making new friends. Bozeman, from what I've experienced, is kind of cliquey if you haven't had the same experiences. I mean, it's really hard to move here and break into a new friend group, right? So I will admit that most of my friends here are, I call them expats, but that's not it. They're transplants, right? They're here from another place, which isn't bad, but it's just like, we all needed a community and we found one in each other. Also, it takes work. Like, I can't just be like, okay, I emailed all my coworkers and be like, oh, I want a friend. They're gonna be like, okay, like, great, good for you. Like, how are you going to do that? And I do think social media is really important. I had pointed out, I had posted on Facebook, like, those big life achievements that they have, like those boxes. I mean, I do it for silly things, like, set my first facsimile. Like, they're like, that's not what that's for. But it's like, I did one for when I moved to Bozeman, and I had a high school friend message me and say, hey, do you know Erica Schnee? Her family, has a shoe store in town. That's my cousin. So now Erica is a really great friend of mine, and I wouldn't have ever met her just because we run in different circles, right? She's a vice principal at Bozeman High. I have nothing to do with high schoolers, ever. Like, I don't have a student. I don't know why. I don't know. There's no reason for me to be at high school. But it's just things like that. Just use connections. And yeah, it is awkward. It's like a blind date, really, right? You're going there. I mean, have note cards. I don't physically have note cards, but I definitely practice what I'm going to ask people about. Like, my go-tos are, what TV shows are you watching? And it sounds stupid, but people like to talk about it, right? Like, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I'll watch Parks and Rec or something, and you just find something that connects you to that person. It doesn't need to be. Yes, go ahead.
People find using note cards charming.
Oh, do they?
Yes.
I should start doing that then.
Because it's like, oh, look, I might ask you.
Oh, good to know. Okay.
Oh, look.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Just being super vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm making an effort.
Yeah.
I'm like, I actually want to know these things about
Yeah.
So just say. Like,
No, that's a really good point.
You may stutter and get sweaty before you meet people.
Yeah.
You do, like, bring the note cards and
It's fine. Yeah.
Sorry.
Bring note cards. And you're right, being vulnerable is what this is all about. Like, you just have to not wear your heart on your sleeve, but you really need to make yourself available. Otherwise, you're not going to make friends. What they always say, like, if you're in line at a coffee shop, why sit there and like just scroll on your phone with your headphones in? No one is ever going to approach you. But if you're, right? Like, exactly, like, look up, look at other things. Like, I'm a total eavesdropper, I'll admit it. Like, I'll like eavesdrop on the conversation people are having in line and be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but yeah, but I did. Be yourself, be brave. It's really hard to, yeah, thank you. I mean, I also don't hide who I am. So, on social media, a lot of people, this is just a professional tip. If you guys are really worried about what you're doing on social media affecting your job, I mean, granted, you're like smoking pot, drinking like too much alcohol or whatever, yeah, that's bad. But if you have certain political beliefs or you do believe in something and you're posting about it, own up to it, right? If an employer sees like, oh, wow, she's super politically minded, but everything's on my personal stuff. I never say that I work for Montana State University. And if they claim that as something that is going to affect you being hired, you don't want to work for them anyway, right? Like, what are their values, and how do you feel about working for a company that's going to limit what you can do in your free time? So that's it. Any questions? We can have a conversation about it? No? Okay. Yes?
Do you have any other suggestions of where to meet?
That's a good suggestion. Oh, that's a good question. Oh my gosh. I really liked Meetup. Like, I think that really set the tone. Like, my very first Meetup, it was like game night in Livingston. I think it was like 3 weeks after I had moved here, and it was like a game night potluck in Livingston. I literally was so scared because I was like, where the hell is Livingston? Like, why am I going to this stranger's house? Like, from the East Coast, nobody is that trusting. Like, nobody, like, what is going on? And I will admit that I stayed friends with a few of those girls for, maybe a year. But then we had different lives. We didn't really have the same lifestyle, so we kind of broke apart. But then I met a lot of people through book club. I meet a lot of people through volunteering as well. I also just go, I really like Heyday, guys. I just like hang out there, just like not good. I mean, I'll go and be like, oh, I like all this stuff. I might not buy anything, but I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. And then just start chatting with people, especially like, if it's a slow business day and you're at the Foundry or something, like, oh, this is so cool. Where did you do this? Or have you heard of any cool events coming into town, et cetera? But it is hard. I'm sorry. How long have you been in town? Okay, yeah. I will, like, when I first moved here, people were like, it takes a year to make friends. And it's hard to, like, think about that. But I can connect you to people if you want. Yeah. Like, just a lot of people on campus who I know might, if you like mountain biking or random things like that, we can talk after. Yeah.
Neelam, do you find
Yeah.
that you're the one initiating the friend date?
Oh.
At Heyday, you say, hey, do you want to go grab coffee? Or
Oh,
how do
yeah.
you sort of breach that awkward?
Oh, I 100% initiate that. And I also call it a friend date. And I'm like, I am doing an experiment where I am going on friend dates. Yeah. And they're like, oh, okay. And then we do. So I think the part of it, I think that why I've been kind of successful about it is that people haven't ever like interacted with someone like me before. I think they're just like, wow, this girl is really bold and kind of like out there. Sure, I'll say yes to her. Or like, I'm curious about, I've never had anyone say no to me. About that. Oh no, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, I didn't go on all 52, but like the friends that bye guys, but I did meet, and they were all through friends. It wasn't just like, they weren't just like complete strangers, right? They would be like, oh, okay, I had, Brian introduced me to Erica, and it's interesting because our families are connected in a weird way. Anyway, her cousin dated my cousin, it's fine. All the way out in Virginia, but it did help that it was with, like, I had at least 1 week tie through like a coworker or through like a friend from home or something. But if it was like a complete stranger, I don't think I would be brave enough. I am now, but when I first moved here, it's really hard to like, if I'm at the museum and I'm seeing someone looking at the same dinosaur I'm forgetting what the words are right now. Bones, sculpture, that's not it. But I wouldn't be like, hey, you look fun, do you wanna go get coffee? Like, that's weird, okay? That maybe won't get you any friends. But just like, oh, if you're standing around saying like, oh, hey, oh, do you know what you should also go to? Any like art classes or any classes that have you can go alone or even Pilates or yoga or something, and then have just like stand around, kind of, not loiter, but basically loitering, but like be cool about it. And just be like, oh yeah, like you can really get into that Cobra pose. Can you show me how to do it later? I don't know. Yes?
Yeah, no, Bozeman, Bozeman Makerspace.
Yeah, Bozeman Makerspace is awesome.
Bozeman Bike Kitchen.
Yeah.
All those.
So you can go alone, but then you can meet other people while you're there. So I think that's great, especially if it's not necessarily like a formal setting. Sometimes kind of helps diffuse the awkwardness, especially like if you're there, you can like concentrate on like fixing your bike or making pottery at the Emerson, and like, sweet, the person sitting next to you is a total dud, it's fine. Like, you're there to make some art, or you might totally hit it off. So, yeah.
So that is the artworks.
Yes, it is. Make some friends there. Loiter around the wine and cheese. Maybe you'll find someone there.
And do you have any friends where you're going now? Or do you have
I do. So, Bozeman was no, actually, when I went to college, I didn't have any friends either. Because, I went from a small town in Virginia to a small private school, and, there was only like one kid from my town that went there, which was me. But when I moved to Bozeman, I would tell people like, oh, hey, like I'm moving to Montana. And first of all, people were shocked that I was moving here. And the second thing was like, wow, isn't that close to Canada? Like, have fun. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I will. But it's funny because now when I tell people that I'm moving to Columbus, maybe because it is such a big university, they're like, oh, my cousin went there, or, I have so-and-so who lives there, they'd be happy to talk to you, which I'm really excited about. And I feel like I have to start my friend dating all over again because those are my weak ties and I need to get in there and just be like, hey, could you be a friend? Or at least, tell me where to live. I feel like there's no bad place to live in Bozeman, but I don't want to live in like a shady part of Columbus, right? So I do have some, and I actually have a grad school classmate who lives there, so we're pretty good friends. Yeah. So.
So what will you do differently?
When I'm out there?
Yeah, at OSU.
Yeah.
At Columbus University.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a good question. I will say that since I do have a friend already there, not that she's going to be my only friend because I feel like I can get sick of people and they can get sick of me very easily, just like spending so much time with each other. But I didn't put an importance on finding a partner in Bozeman, mainly because it's so far from my family. And I, have dated in Bozeman and it was really hard. It's, either we hit it off and then career trajectories kept us apart, or it just didn't work out because I want to be within driving distance of my parents, and 32 hours is not driving distance of my parents. So that is something that I will try, but then also getting back into volunteering in the junior league, I really miss that. Giving back to the community is something that I feel like I haven't really done much here in Bozeman. I've been really selfish, and I've taken a lot from the community in Bozeman, but I haven't given back as much as I wanted. So hopefully that. And honestly, I should have brought this up. I don't have a dog, but dogs are a great way to meet people, right? So I think I'm gonna get a dog when I move to Columbus. It's just easier to meet people at a dog park or whatever. It makes you more approachable. Yeah.
How does your social media, you play that into finding friends?
Yeah. So I am one of those people that if we meet once or twice, I'll totally friend you on Facebook. I have no qualms about doing that. I know some people are like, oh, I can only have 500 friends on Facebook. I'm like, I don't care. I don't post anything that I'm too worried about. All my social media are public. That's also my job. And I'm trying to, you try to brand yourself as something. But I will do that. And then Facebook, I'm not going to lie, Bozeman folks use Facebook like it's 2007. Facebook's huge here. Twitter's not as big here, but everything happens on Facebook, which is so interesting to me. And I've kind of had to embrace that because I don't really like Facebook. Sorry. But I use Twitter a lot, and that's actually how I keep connected with my colleagues and friends who live elsewhere. That's also important because while you might be living in a new space, it's important to keep those connections that you had from where you've lived before as well, because you never know. They could come out here to visit you. It's always nice to have a piece of home with you as well. Yes?
Were you in a social media position before MSU?
Nope.
How would you
Yeah, I wasn't. I majored in history in college, and yeah, thanks, Dad. And I was also student body president in college, so I use social media in terms of how, election and when I was in that position there. And then when I worked at Wake Forest, I used social media. I worked in the IT department, And so that was really interesting for me to get communication skills that are vital to that industry in terms of I was literally the go-between between our programmers and the constituents on campus, like our stakeholders. So I leveraged that into getting this job, and it worked out. But yeah, it was like self-taught. So yeah, I didn't have a social media position before this.
All right, well, we'll wrap up.
Thanks, Amy.
Kayla.
Oh, thank you.